Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and I'm here at the University Bookstore in Seattle, Washington with Rhiannon Held, author of Reflected. Rhiannon, welcome to Author.
Thank you very much.
So Rhiannon, I didn't really want to have to start here, but I feel like I've got to because I've interviewed hundreds of writers now, and many of whom have had day jobs or have day jobs, but you're the first. You're probably not surprised to learn that is an archaeologist by day. But first of all, we should say that there's no pith helmets involved in your archaeology.
No.
Maybe describe what it is you do.
Sure. I work for a private company that's part of a bigger environmental compliance firm. So if you think about what you hear in the news about some big shopping center is going to be built, and so they're checking for wetlands and eagles and water quality and air quality and a whole slew of things that's part of the big environmental firm. And then our office is specifically for archaeology. So when they're out checking the wetlands and the eagles and the et cetera, what they also want to do is make sure that there's not any sort of archaeological sites that might get destroyed, or also like historic buildings. The first log cabin ever built in Washington State or something crazy like that. You don't want to knock that down.
So obviously you went to school for this, got an advanced degree in it,
Yeah.
but you're also writing paranormal, urban, romantic fantasy, I guess. Would you categorize it that way or not?
Usually on the sort of the bookshelves, whatever people call it, but the bookshelves, bookstores kind of thing. It's urban fantasy because there's a romantic element, but the other stuff that's going on is sort of paramount.
I see.
As opposed to like a paranormal romance, the other stuff going on is supporting the romance. Which is,
so how do these two people meet? How does the archaeologist, she's living with an urban fantasy writer. How do these people overlap, or are they totally separate?
Well, at first I thought they were separate. Back in the day, when I was first writing, I would have said, never the twain shall meet.
Right.
And as I started getting into this novel series, I realized how my sort of background was coming in. And I said, but I'm never going to write historical fiction. I'm just never going to do that. I don't want to. And right now, it's not on contract. It's just something for fun. I am, in fact, writing historical fiction.
And so you get to flex a little bit of your history muscle there.
Yeah, and the reason I originally said I would never do it is because part of sort of academia about archaeology is you learn not to story tell about your data. Like, you don't make up this if you find some like mask or something.
How can you not?
Well,
I mean, life is a story.
Yes, I mean, you try to minimize it and you try to back it up.
You want to be just factual.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're telling a story about how the inhabitants of this ancient village might have lived, each step you want to say, and this is similar to a living culture, and we found this in the ground, and this and that, and every single step you got to back it up.
Now, don't you love it when you get to sit down? Do you write at night or in the morning? When do you write?
I write at night.
Don't you like when you get home and you don't have to support anything with any
Well,
evidence?
exactly. And what I found originally when I tried to write anything historical was I sort of felt like in academia they'd been standing over me being like, support it, support it. And so I sit down and I would be trying to mentally support what I was putting on the page, and it wasn't working, right? And the thing that you learn, especially in both fiction and when you're writing sort of the archaeological report, is you can never know everything. Even when we have written records never cover everything, and you have to make it up at some point if you're going to write a full world. And so I would have real trouble like getting to the point where I'm like, I don't know, but I have to make it up, as opposed to like, because you can lose yourself in like finding more and more sources. And I'm not somebody who finds pleasure through like looking through old books and blah, blah, blah. I get what I need, I get back out again. I'm not a super research person.
Right.
So
okay. Werewolves.
Yes.
Why the werewolf? Why is that so interesting? If I didn't care at all about werewolves, teach me why a werewolf is cool.
Sure. It's funny. back in the day, I got like vampire fangs for a costume or something. I showed them off to my parents, and my father sort of like looked at me. He's like, in my day, vampires were bad guys. I'm like, I'm sorry. Because, of course, I grew up in the day of, Anne Rice.
That's when it began to change.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when it began to change.
But werewolves, I'd read a lot of vampire fiction. Like, I read a lot of urban fantasy before I started reading it, writing it. And werewolves struck me as sometimes sort of presenting a very similar metaphor to vampires. And I wanted to break them off and do something different with them, because if you have vampires being a metaphor for sort of addiction, why do we need werewolves being a metaphor for addiction too? Because it was a very similar sort of like, I want to drink blood or I want to kill people. I have these limitations on myself and I'm very tortured. Like, both were doing similar things. So I wanted to kind of break werewolves off. And I also saw them as being really open to what I ended up doing with them, which was taking them very scientific and being sort of species-based.
Right.
And I've seen people do that a little bit with vampires as far as sort of like making it a disease or taking it scientific in that method. And so I decided werewolves, I think they're really open to taking them scientific as far as biology and animal behavior and animal structure. And then I ended up actually using a lot of human behavior to inform them, because people were always like, oh, did you really, really study wolf behavior? And I was like, well, I studied enough to get it right. And then I studied human behavior.
Were you writing in college? Were you writing all this time that you were studying to become an archaeologist?
I didn't really write fiction except for school assignments till I was 15 or 16.
All right, so you got a little late start.
Yeah, but I feel like I hit the ground running as far as working on it and trying to become a better writer and revising and all that sort of stuff, as opposed to the sort of beginning noodling around just writing. So
right away, you were like, I
thing.
wanted to write a story. You were trying to teach yourself to write a story. And were you writing fantasy right away?
Yes, a little bit of sci-fi at the beginning, but yeah, I've always been a spec fic girl. Sometimes
some writers in the genres get a little embarrassed about it, not serious. You never had to contend with that personally.
No, I was very geeky in high school. So I was
you
always
embraced the geek.
Yes, I totally embraced it. And my parents were, I think, geeky in their day, but they sort of like, they grew out of it.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, I ain't never grown out of this, sorry. This is how I am.
Are you an outliner?
A little bit. I outline mentally, and I write down as much as, yes, exactly. I write down as much as that as I need to sort of pin it down so I don't lose it. But I'm not somebody who writes it down and then fills it in and then fills it in and,
Do you need an ending before you'll start?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
And do you always reach that ending?
Yeah, almost always. I'm not very squirrely as far as where I go. If anything, I write short. My first drafts are always shorter than my final drafts.
Oh, interesting.
And so if anything, I tend to see the beginning and the end and like a high point along the way, and I can sometimes write through it too straightforwardly. And what I do when I go back in revision is add more sort of depth and setup and subplots and things like that.
So, Rhiannon, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
What I'd like you to do is finish this sentence for me. If writing has taught me anything, it has taught me what?
If writing has taught me anything, I think it's taught me confidence. Because I'm naturally somewhat shy and introverted. I knew that to succeed in writing, I would have to learn some skills. And so the first set of those skills was sort of like how to construct a sentence and how to construct a scene, et cetera. That was all easy. And then once I sold, it's kind of like, okay, I have to learn these skills of, how to talk to editors at cocktail parties, at conventions, and, and so it motivated me to say, okay, this is a skill just like constructing a sentence. I have to read something about how to do it. I have to listen to some advice. I have to practice. I have to practice some more. I have to practice some more. And then very slowly I will get better at it. And so having taken on something that really began as very difficult for me, And then now I've practiced, and now, I mean, I still wouldn't say that I enjoy it, but I consider that I can at least, you know, for the space of a cocktail party, project confidence. Sort of gives me a feeling of I can do pretty much anything.
Right.
You know, maybe I won't like learning to, I don't know, survive in Antarctica or something, you know, strange.
Right.
But I could, by the same methods of looking up advice and practicing and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's nice. It's makes you feel more grounded.